right, folks. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. My name is Juan Orlandini, and I'm being joined today with Mike Spindler, and we're going to be covering how to overcome backup server modernization challenges. Mike will kick it off, and I'll jump in as needed. Mike?
Thank you, Juan. This is Mike Spindler. I'm the practice director for data protection and storage with Datalink, and as Juan mentioned, the two of us are going to be talking about the modernization challenges with backup servers and appliances in general, and trying to contrast and compare different approaches and a direction to be considered. Anyway, why don't we jump into things and just look at what we'll be covering today. Look at the role of appliances within IT and how appliances have really become an everyday thing within IT in a lot of different areas. In the backup space, it's fairly new, but it has been around and been used for quite a while. We'll look at traditional backup architecture. Juan will go through some of the dials and widgets you have to consider when architecting and scaling some of those solutions. And then we'll look at and compare between building your own and appliances through all the different phases of those of creating a backup media server. We'll have a short portion on the net backup appliance itself and show how that fits into things and how this works in that transformed architecture. Lastly, we'll show you a tool that we put up on our website that we have out there for our customers to use and to be able to do some of their own return on investment based on your particular parameters that are out there. Simple to use, just requires a few parameters. Anyway, why don't we get started? Appliances' role in IT, they're not new to the data center. We've been using them substantially within many different areas of the data center. On the networking side is probably the first place where appliances really got a connection. If we take a step back, the network appliances that are out there give us the capability of adding building blocks, being able to provide functionality, being able to provide capabilities, and do that in that building block approach, not having to do the architecture, create the systems yourself, having known ways of supporting them, as well as some of the internal things within the enterprise of how you manage different platforms, different operating systems, change control, things of that nature. So that networking space, we have WAN optimization, gateways, load balancing for applications, and even some appliances that are strictly tuned to delivering applications themselves. Security is probably another common place that you use them within your data center today, doing threat protection from that standpoint, or maybe gateway scanning, variety along there. Can't forget on the VMware side of things, when VMware announced the virtual appliance, it pretty much was a configure, set, and ready to go VM to perform maybe some of those networking or security functions within that virtual environment. VApps have really taken off. There's hundreds of VApps that are available out there from a variety of different vendors, through VMware themselves, through users groups, and a lot of activity in that space. We're seeing in our customer base a lot of use of appliances as building blocks within big data analytics type of applications for being able to gather the data, notes for being able to do some of the number crunching involved and things of that nature. In the data protection space, we've had appliances for some time for external deduplication devices. Many of you might have Data Domain or Quantum or any of the other dedupe appliances that are out there. I mean, the advantages of those is you have the operating system, you have the application code, you have the storage, all in one package. It's all supported as one through one vendor, as well as the problem resolution is simpler than being able to create your own deduplication appliances. It is doable, and some of our customers, actually many of them, do that, and that approach is workable. There's just issues to consider that we'll get into as we go through here. The real thing that is just starting to come of interest, and Symantec is probably the best example of that, is really providing backup in a box. And not just simply having a server that has the backup software loaded on it, but have that appliance really optimized for the environment, optimized from a security standpoint, hardened, that it can't be compromised from security, and being able to easily implement those appliances. And that's really what we're going to try to focus on here today and do some comparisons there. The build versus buy for just appliances generically. Many environments that I've worked with in the past, you have the security folks that don't allow particular ports to be open, or need to validate that certain applications or ports are hardened and inaccessible, from these appliances. If you build that yourself, you need to validate those type of things. From the networking side of things, if you use multiple networking cards, being able to set up either the QoS or being able to load balance across those networking are additional considerations. If you build your own versus an appliance, you have an operating system to support. It's not as common now, but just going back a couple of years, many environments hadn't supported Linux as an operating system. So even though that was the operating system that was used, building it on your own presented challenges from the rest of IT being able to support it. Appliances, many of these run some version of Linux within there, but from an operating standpoint, it's already been hardened. It's already been taken care of to be able to manage. The server hardware, you have different firmware updates. It might be for the peripheral cards that are within that server. It could be for the BIOS itself within that server. Appliances give me a capability of, again, supporting that as a single capability, as well as on the storage and all the storage connectivity cards that are out there. We spoke about the Linux skills. It's not as common anymore, but many times if you're a Windows-only shop, you might not have some of those Linux skills in order to create and build those appliances. Scaling is another factor when building your own, of being able to have a design that as your environment grows, being able to take these appliances and scale that. Managing the performance, of being able to control the performance on the box, knowing where the choke point is, how much I can add to that appliance before I need to add another one. When I add another one, how do I balance that performance between those different boxes? All of these are things that within appliances, many of the things that have been taken into consideration for that in order to make it this building block approach. Monitoring and managing. If I have particularly multiple servers out there that I've built that are running, how do I manage the alerts that are coming from those servers for faults, managing the support within those environments, and then there's remote support. If it does break, are you getting notice that something is going wrong? And is that for one appliance or one server that you have out there, or for multiple? Those are all considerations that are out there. If you really look at build versus buy, you have a lot of different parts. And on the build side, and with an appliance, it's really fully assembled and ready to go from that particular standpoint. So that's our portion on just how appliances play in IT. What we'd like to talk about now is the traditional net backup environment, and Juan will take you through that.
Thank you, Mike. So what I'd like to talk about a little bit is how traditional net backup architectures evolved. They weren't really a lot of them weren't really architected. They were architected by accident, if anything. And you typically started off with a master server that was connected to some backup transport network of some type. And for the purposes of this discussion, it's almost irrelevant whether it was a SAN, a LAN, or a WAN. The important part is that there was a guy that was controlling all of this stuff. And then you had some clients that were on your network, whether they were servers or desktops or whatever. They were connected through to your transport network and off to a media server. And more, those media servers are being converted over to disk-based storage types. So whether it's with a built-in disk to the server, with external disk to the server, or appliances, or it could be things like a data domain or a quantum or any of those other deduplication appliances. But you would buy a media server, and then your environment would grow. And as your environment grew, you might overload the capacity of the current server, or that server was just too old, so what you would typically do is get another media server. And very rarely, if ever, do we see that it's the exact same model, make, size, configuration as the previous media server. And this is where the challenges start becoming apparent for migration, upgrades, management, configuration management, change management, all those other things. Because as you start evolving your backup environment, you start noticing there's like, hey, my original media server was this Dell server. I've now migrated to HP as my server or Cisco as my server platform. Now I'm managing two different types, and maybe I have internal disk instead of external disk, and it kind of became more challenging. And then your environment grew more, and you added yet another one. And so as your environments change, migrate, your volume of data increases, and all of those kinds of things, it became increasingly challenging to manage a large environment along those lines. It might also be that you need multiple OS types on the left-hand side of this design. It might be that you need multiple platforms for the recovery side, so whether it's native dedupe to semantic or it's a dedupe that comes from another vendor. It could be a number of different solutions that are being mixed together, and ultimately you end up with a management nightmare for something that should be relatively straightforward to grow in a cookie-cutter kind of a way. So, moving forward, Mike's going to cover a little bit as to what the industry's seeing, and then I'm going to jump back in and tell you about how we would address that from a technology side of the house. Before Mike jumps back on, I'd like to point out that there's a Q&A section to the presentation. Mike and I are both monitoring that Q&A session. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to shoot them over to us, and we'll answer them as quickly as we can. And at the tail end of this presentation, we will also have a Q&A time left so that we can cover any details that you folks would like. Mike?
Thank you, Juan. If you're subscribed to Gartner, many of you might be aware of and know the name of Dave Russell. He handles most of the data protection and storage pieces within. His name is attached a lot when it comes to backup technologies and where he sees things fitting. He made a presentation last year that really focused on moving to a holistic approach when it came to data protection of a single platform or solution that can provide a much more cost-effective and bring all those points together to make building blocks or appliances out of data protection to help scale and grow that environment in a logical way. So jumping into it, I'll show you at the end an ROI tool that we've put onto our website, and what I'm going to go through now is some of the things that we try to look at in creating some of those ROI tools. The tool that you use, you'll be able to put your own information in. You'll get some preliminary numbers and graphs out of that, and what we'll do then is come by and be able to explain in depth where we got to those numbers, how it was determined, and the goal of what I'm going to go through next is what those pieces are and where we're seeing differences of sort of a build versus appliance side of things. Everything really starts from a standpoint of you need to go and acquire the pieces that are out there, and to do that you need to do research in what you're looking for. If you're using, for example, Windows-based media servers, You might have had a Dell server in there that's a couple years old. You need to add another media server. You go out there and look, they don't have that same media server available. You're going to the next model. Anyway, you do a lot of research in finding a server that has enough slots in order to accommodate my I/O as well as all my storage needs that are out there, and there's time involved for that. From an appliance side of things, you look at the appliance holistically, so some of that time is reduced in being able to do some of the research. You might do evaluation, bring in a sample box, do some testing, have to build it, set it up, and validate your choices that you made through your research, for those media servers. You reduce that from an appliance standpoint because you're limiting some of the build time and setup time in being able to do that evaluation. From a final configuration standpoint, the whole idea behind appliances, they give you enough choices that handle your I/O needs, that handle your storage needs, that you're picking basically out of a grid based on how many connections I need and how much storage I need, and here's the appliance and where I go from there. It's also, when it comes to appliance, taking into account a lot of the scaling capabilities of that, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. From an ordering side of things, build versus an appliance. If you're doing a build your own, you're getting an operating system from one location. You're getting backup software from another. You're getting the server hardware from another. You could be getting the network connection and storage from other companies. So an appliance reduces that because everything's coming under one umbrella. From a build your own strategy and actually putting the thing together, try to sort of lay out, here's a lot of the different steps of what you would go through, the pieces that you would need, and really want to try to illustrate is some of these functions I can reduce and some I can eliminate altogether from a appliance versus a build your own. Some of them fairly obvious. Having to install the OS and patch that OS to whatever is compatible with the application software from an appliance standpoint has already been done. Loading that application piece of it and patching it is, you still have to do the configuration pieces of it, but everything has been loaded, everything has been tuned for that device, so you have a cut down in time there. The rest is pretty straightforward from that, but we've tried to section things out into reducing the time and effort. It's really people and time needed in order to do these pieces. This concentrates very heavily on OpEx savings that you look at, with some CapEx reduction as well. But these are some of the things that help reduce people and time and help reduce some of the labor factors associated with it. Juan, can you talk a little bit about administering and managing that environment?
So sure. So in a traditional environment, what you end up doing is managing, as we'd mentioned before, multiple disparate types of servers, multiple types of different devices, and it even gets inside of the servers things like HBA cards, NIC cards, the drivers for those, patching the OSs, and all of those things. So it becomes a rather challenging thing to keep track of all of that stuff. And we've seen in some instances where customers have to spend weeks, if not months, prepping through change control just to do maintenance and upgrades of their backup server infrastructure, just because it's kind of grown up by accident, or the standardization might be there, but it's across multiple types of platforms individually by site or one of those kinds of things. So this is getting more complicated as environments are migrating more to physical storage. Customers are having huge data sets. It's not uncommon for us to see environments now with petabytes worth of capacity on the floor that are being protected by a net backup. And to monitor all of that, you have to start implementing all sorts of tool sets to monitor the reliability of your backup hardware, as well as the connectivity that backup hardware has to the outside world, whether it's to backup devices or to the networks or to the clients and all those other things. And again, the complexity of doing that across multiple platform types is very, very challenging, and is causing a significant cost for our customers, way beyond any cost associated with the initial purchase of those platforms. So, Mike, I didn't know there was a build on this. So, sorry, I'll continue on the slide. So, I'd mentioned that it's been pretty challenging for customers to manage the day-to-day operations, but when you go through the process of supporting and patching and upgrading an environment, it's not just a single thing that you end up having to take a look at. It would be really nice if it was just net backup that you had to upgrade, but it's very often that you have to upgrade the OS. If you upgrade the OS, then you have to take it through change control. Change control might send it off to security. Security might then tell you that you can or cannot, or you have to go through another set of validation. Then you also have to double check across all the vendors to make sure all the things are supported based on what the different components in your organization are telling you to do. All right. And then finally, it's time to upgrade Net Backup itself, and at that point you have to verify that all of the components that are as part of this thing are actually going to work the way Net Backup wants it to work. And that can very often lead to a lot of confusion, a lot of support calls between you and Net Backup support organization. It could be Datalink, could be somebody else, could be calls to the manufacturer of your backup device, so the data domains, the quantums, the SpectraLogics, or whatever. So it could be a number of different things that you get involved. And then once you have it upgraded, it's a new environment, new potentially operating system, new potentially everything. You have to go through the process of tweaking and tuning it and re-optimizing the system performance for that specific configuration. And it's a rebuild from scratch process at that point. Some of the knowledge that you have from your previous configuration will probably transfer, but there will be also new things that have happened because of the change in the environment that you have to go through the process of relearning, remodifying, retuning, retweaking, and all that other stuff. So this is a pretty challenging task for most of our customers, especially in larger environments. And another way of depicting this is you could start off with the backup application. There's the server platform itself that needs to be upgraded, the operating system, the storage, any of those add-on components, and then all of the support mechanisms that go along with it. All right. So you also add to that the acquire lifecycle to this, to install, the admin, the patch, the support, and it goes round and round and round. So Symantec, to their credit, realized that this is a solvable problem. One way to do it is to become basically a vendor of an appliance that does backup. Right? And in this single platform, the Net Backup 5230, it comes in the 2U, 5U, or 8U configuration currently. The 2U configuration is for the server, and then the 5U and 8U is for the external shelves that have capacity to them. Combined, all of those can be configured to 76 terabytes of usable capacity, of which 72 terabytes can be used for deduplication. If there's any technical folks on the line, the reason for that is that you don't want to mix the internal drives that are on the controller, the 2U head, with the external drives for deduplication. There's a performance penalty if you do that. These 5230 appliances can be masters or media servers. Many customers choose to run them just as media servers and leave their masters as virtuals. Some want to have just a dedicated master media server that does it all for smaller facilities. So it's available in all of those configurations. Built into the platform is the ability to do deduplication at client or target. Now, it should be mentioned that the 5230 appliance itself comes with no Net Backup licensing. The licensing is acquired separately. So the intent behind that is that you decouple your ability to do backups from your hardware to do backups. And what that allows you to do is, as your environment changes and the platforms mature, you don't have to rebuy the license for being able to do backups. You just buy the new stuff that you use to do backups, and lets you scale and grow and change your environment without relicensing everything inside of it. These appliances also have connectivity, a fiber channel, 1 and 10 gigabit Ethernet, and there's multiple configurations that support a significant amount of bandwidth. Some of the testing that Datalink's done internally, we've gotten 3 and 4 gigabyte per second throughputs very easily. We actually were bottlenecked by our devices on the other end, the arrays that we were protecting rather than the deduplication appliance. So it's tremendously fast. And built into it is also the ability to do replication as well. So you can configure it in many architectures, hub and spoke, one to many, many to one. You can have multi-hop configurations. So we're seeing customers start deploying these things in a large environment in the central data center, and smaller configurations for remote office backups. So we've also seen large configurations of 2 main data centers that they cross-replicate. So all of those are possible with this appliance. Built into the appliance is also the ability to have VMware-based backups. With NetBackup 7.6, there's a tremendous improvement in how you can manage the backups of VMware, to where you can do accelerated backups. We don't have time to get into that in today's presentation, but if you want to listen into next week's Tech Tuesday, we will cover in depth how VMware is protected with NetBackup, and there's a link to that on our website that will point you to that. And in there, we'll cover how it's accelerated, significantly improved. There's ability to do granular recovery, everything from individual files that are within the VM, mail messages that are within the VM that's hosting Exchange, all the way to the VMDKs that represent that VMware application or VMware server. There's deduplication. Inside of the appliance is also Symantec's storage foundation, so the volume manager file system are leveraged inside of that, so you can have in the future the capability of expanding and growing these appliances beyond the current limitations. Symantec, being the security company that they are, has also pre-hardened the operating system. That's pretty much that's a very important point. This is more and more critical nowadays, and Symantec has spent considerable effort in hardening the operating system. They've optimized the hardware, and they've created a redundant storage platform underneath the covers. And unique to the appliance, a lot of those things that you see right there are available within the NetBackup core platform, but unique to the appliance is the integration with the critical system protection, which is a Symantec product for security. And also on the back end is the built-in WAN optimization to remote facilities. So if you want to copy stuff from a small facility to a central facility, this in essence is a similar function to what you would get from a Riverbed or Silver Peak or one of those kinds of WAN acceleration optimization packages built right into the appliance, so you don't have to go buy one of those if you don't have one. We've seen tremendous improvements in backup performance with just that feature, and that's included in every appliance. It's not available outside of the appliances. In addition to that, because it's an appliance, NetBackup or the appliance itself sends a auto support message back to Symantec and to TSPP partners like Datalink, who do support for this platform. And it's basically a phone home messaging back to us to let us know, hey, the appliance is working, the hardware is working, we have health and everything's good, and if something needs to be replaced, that we can proactively take care of that. So think about it as a hardware-based appliance like a NetApp or an EMC or Hitachi RAID array, but for your backups. And it puts it in the same class of service as those environments. There's a single service platform where you can take a look at all your appliances, and there's tight integration, as I mentioned, between Datalink and Symantec on all of these points. So the intent is so that you can have protection between remote offices and branch offices back to central headquarters, virtual and physical machines in great depth. There's no greater backup platform coverage than Symantec and for both virtual machines and physical machines. If you want, there's also integration with cloud-based storage environments today, so you can copy stuff off from a Symantec appliance off to an Amazon or a AT&T or a Rackspace cloud for off-site data protection. And disaster recovery is also built into this as part of the net backup base solution, but tightly integrated with the appliance, is the ability to do a thing called AIR, which stands for Auto Image Replication, which gives you the ability to have two sites replicate to each other and the master servers at either end to be aware of the data that they're hosting, so that in the case of a disaster, the surviving site can automatically and immediately start recovering the data. There's no need to go through a catalog import or recovery process. You can all that data is immediately available for you to start recovery. So we're seeing more and more where customers want to completely get rid of tape, not just because of the cost of the media itself, but also because there's no need to ship tapes anymore for disaster recovery. All that data is already immediately available as part of the replication and functionality built into the appliances. So IDC also had some nice things to say about this strategy. Robert Amatruda, who's the research director for data protection and recovery team for IDC, is basically saying that purpose-built backup appliance simplify the deployment and management of these systems. I'd like to give you my version of this slide, which is, if you recall back to my original build where we had that master server that was connected to the backup transport, and then you had some clients. We added a media server, and if you notice, it's the same box, just with the extra drives. So I added capacity. My environment grew. I added another one of the same things. And the concept behind all of this is that I have, in essence, come up with a Lego block architecture for putting together a backup protection strategy for today and also moving forward. So as my environment matures and changes, all I need to do is just put in one of these bricks that covers the extra capacity that's been added to my environment, and I move forward. What's nice is if I need to do any upgrades of my server platform, my backup platforms, Symantec distributes a single binary. So there's one button, one change control that upgrades the operating system, the net backup software, any necessary drivers, and optimizes all of that stuff to work as efficiently as possible based on what Symantec has discovered across all of the install base of net backup appliances. And today, that's nearing somewhere in the neighborhood of about 6,000 appliances across about 2,000 customers. And that's an amazing statistic. If you think about it, when you go through your own build process for these appliances, home-built appliances, if you go through a build process for your own dedicated hardware, you're testing against just what you know. Symantec has to pre-approve every Symantec build against everything that's out there in the field. And you're getting the benefit of scale for these appliances as you start upgrading and managing them that way. So there's a huge amount of value in that, is that you have a well-understood, well-defined, rigorous methodology that you can just leverage just by downloading one binary, applying it against your environment, and moving forward. So with that, Mike?
Just to add one other thing on there, we have many customers, too, that might not be using the deduplication within that backup itself, but are leveraging a data domain or leveraging a quantum that is sitting out there. One of the things they find nice about the appliances is they can do the 4 terabyte entry-level appliance with the associated 410 gig, 1 gig, and fiber channel, and they know they have building blocks from a media server standpoint. They get the benefit of being able to update with the one binary, as well as being able to much better judge as I add X number more jobs to my system, or I have more virtual machines that I'm protecting. I add another appliance in order to accommodate that additional workload that's out there. I have a fixed building block of how much workload and how much network bandwidth I have, from a media server standpoint. So even environments using external deduplication appliances are leveraging the net backup appliance as just a media server in performing those environments. This ROI tool that we created on Datalink.com pretty much takes 6 pieces of information: how much an administrator in your backup space, what that salary is for that person, how long you depreciate that, and some other information, and we'll go through and I'll show you a little bit closer here. Allows you to see your own results broken out by CapEx and OpEx. Here's a little closer picture.
The reason we built this tool is that a lot of times customers have a hard time justifying an appliance versus a build-it-yourself approach. And internal to Datalink, we have this thing that we call dude math. It's when you try to figure out if you doing it with a dude is cheaper than buying a purpose-built appliance, or trying to do something else and you start doing dude math. And it's a little bit more complicated than that, because if you were to look at what an appliance from Symantec costs versus you purchasing a Dell server, an HP server, a Cisco server, and storage, it might be relatively similar, or it might be a little bit cheaper for you to build it yourself. But if you look at the cost associated with managing that over the time, all those things that Mike and I have been talking about, the patching, the management, the change control, the optimization, the tuning, all that other stuff, and you add that over the cost of what it takes you as administrators, you as managers of administrators to take into account, it becomes a lot more attractive, if not significantly more attractive, for you to go ahead and purchase an appliance rather than having your folks do what essentially is becoming pre-canned solutions. So why reinvent the wheel if you can purchase it for just a slight additional cost?
And where most customers are looking at this is really when they're at their depreciation cycle, when they're looking at updating these media servers, or when they have significantly more workload added and they need to add additional media servers is sort of when these appliances are coming into play. So as you can see, I simply put in 6 pieces of information: the administration cost of the person, and that's a burden cost. There's a little help button next to each step to sort of walk you through the information that it needs. Depreciation cycle, how many years you depreciate that hardware over, and then if you built it your own, how much a server would cost, the operating system, whatever storage you put into it on a cost per storage, cost per terabyte, and then as much as and how much storage you put in each server. By going through that, it comes out and goes through comparing the two, goes through all those steps we talked about, and based on a reduction in time, a reduction in people effort, or the frequency that you need to do particular things, appliance versus build your own, comes up with an OpEx and CapEx number over the period that you depreciate your equipment on of what your yearly savings would be for that. As you can see in this particular example, to Juan's point there, from a CapEx side of things, you could buy all of the individual components and build it yourself from a CapEx, acquiring those pieces for less than what the appliances are. But when you consider all of the administrative, operational, support capabilities that you have with it, that you're saving the time, the OpEx numbers greatly outweigh some of those things from that side of it. So really what we've done is put together a tool. And by the way, one thing that you'll see highlighted on the tool when you go to that website is if the numbers that you see there are interesting, and you'd like to dive down into finding out more about how it's made up and being able to look at tweaking some of those numbers, making an appointment for one of our account executives and his engineer to come out to see you to explain that information, you can get a Fitbit wristwatch for monitoring your health as well as the health of your backup environment is the offer that we're having right now. As I mentioned before, it's really in the operating cost reduction side of things, with being close to the similar capital investment of being able to put all those pieces together. From a Datalink value side of things, what we're adding to things from this particular perspective is design assistance, being able to guide and help based on some of your environmental factors of what you can expect in the way of throughput per unit based on all the environmental factors in your environment to help you determine. In some cases, have been able to take where they had many dissimilar media servers that were out there, and they might have had 8 or 10 of them. We've reduced that down to 5 or 6 of them because we were putting a lot more CPU horsepower behind it with the appliances, and as well as more network connectivity because of the additional slots I have in these appliances in order to do that. So we're going to help with that, and we also have a extensive bench from a upgrade and implementation side of things for net backup itself. We are involved with Symantec from the very beginning with any new release. In the case of the 7.6 release that just came out back in December, we've had that in our labs since June of last year. So we have extensive experience with that. We also do migrations of the master server over to an appliance, move the database within net backup that might be in a fairly typical one we see is one running on a Solaris master. We move that over to the appliance environment and migrate that database over. So you have the capabilities and certified expertise from Symantec in order to accomplish that. And we always focus on best practices. Sorry, I hit the thing twice there. Our best practices, as well as industry best practices and architect solution, are very important to having a well-run, healthy environment for your backup environment. So that's what we put together today. I include some additional information, where the calculator is, our website, and contact information that you may have. Everyone will be getting a copy of this presentation when we finish here. And for now, I guess if you have a question, if you can put it into the Q&A, we'd be happy to go through them.
So, Mike, there was one question that I'd like to share with the group. It came from Felipe Tapia. His question is, given that most shops can't do a rip and replace of the entire infrastructure, will these appliances integrate with existing environments? And that's a very good question. And the answer is absolutely. So these appliances have started off as just as a modernization approach to some customers, where they're slowly taking some of the older hardware and replacing it with these appliances. Others have gone and said, hey, I want to do a rip and replace. We can definitely do that. But by and large, it's mostly an evolution, not a revolution, so to speak. It's absolutely feasible that way. So it's a very good question. I don't see any other questions right now, Mike. There was one earlier about load balancing, regarding load balancing across media servers. And that is a feature of NetBackup. It's core to NetBackup, so it works with these appliances or without. NetBackup has the ability to dynamically determine the CPU utilization on your media servers and assign backup jobs to those that are the least busy. If you folks would like to find out more details to how that's done, please reach out to us and we'd be more than happy to answer that for you specifically. I think that's it. Yep. So as a final comment, as Mike had mentioned, a copy of this presentation will be emailed to everybody that was registered and attended. So you'll have all of that, and then there will be all of the contact info for us as well. We sincerely appreciate your time, and we'll give you about 13 minutes of your day back. And thanks for joining us today. And if you want to deep dive into Datalink, into more of the technology behind the VMware, attend Datalink's Tech Tuesday. That's next Tuesday. And there's a registration for that on our website as well. So we'll be getting into a great amount of detail as to how that works and how to configure it, and even a live demo if we have time. Thanks again. I appreciate everybody's time.